Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azzawi. Since the 2003 US-led invasion, Iraq has experienced an incredible rise in the cultivation and trafficking of drugs. Reports indicate that drug abuse is on the rise among a large segment of Iraqi youth, that drug cartels in Iraq are making handsome profits, and that armed militias have muscled in on this lucrative trade to increase their funding opportunities. There are also reports of drug traffickers bribing custom and security officers. Many blame the increase in drugs on the presence of foreign troops, but also the country's instability and its porous borders mean that drugs are finding easy access into Iraq.
This is the place where thousands of tons of drugs are smuggled into Iraq. The Amara marshlands on Iraq's southeastern border with Iran. In this remote place, it's difficult to identify the fishermen from the drug smugglers.
We go through the very narrow marshes when we're far away from police. Then we meet our Iranian suppliers near the Iranian border. Then we bring the drugs to Amara this way.
Iraq is an important transit point for drugs coming from Afghanistan. Over 8,000 tons of drugs are produced in Afghanistan every year, according to Iranian officials, of which 2,500 tons of these drugs enter Iran. The officials estimate 500 tons are consumed within Iran, another 500 are confiscated by police, and the remaining 1,500 tons are smuggled into neighboring Iraq. The majority of these drugs eventually make it to the Gulf and Europe. Drug trafficking is becoming increasingly lucrative, and the lack of security here is enabling these smugglers in Iraq to carry on with this trade.
Our job is very difficult and very dangerous. We don't have a single boat, so we can't do any patrolling. It's difficult to control these areas. They are wide open.
And that is exactly why these men are able to continue their illegal activity. From Amara, the drugs are then transported through Al-Muthanna province in southern Iraq, in typically traditional means.
The smugglers perform surgery on these animals. They usually cut open the camel's hump, place the drugs inside, and stitch them back up, and then cover the stitches with the camel's hair so it won't be noticeable. It is criminal what they're doing to these animals.
Security officials in Al-Muthanna province believe most of the drugs won't stay in Iraq.
We all know that Iraq is a transit country rather than a consuming one. Drugs are coming from Afghanistan, then Iran, and into Iraq, and eventually to the Gulf countries.
Violence and instability in Iraq means combating drug smuggling may perhaps be a secondary concern, leaving these smugglers with an opportunity to continue to reap the benefits and expand their operations. Musab Jassim for Inside Iraq.
To discuss the drug problem in Iraq, I'm joined from London by Mustafa Al-Ani, Director of Security and Terrorism Studies at Gulf Research Center, and from Tehran by Sadiq Ziba Kalam, a professor of political science at Tehran University. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Iraq. Mustafa Al-Ani, drugs in Iraq prior to 2003 were generally unknown and unavailable simply because users, they went to jail for so many years and traffickers were executed. Today, drug abuse and drug trafficking has become endemic in Iraq, threatening the very fabric of Iraqi society. Has the Iraqi government lost the war on drugs?
I think we still have a chance that if the government have the intention to fight the war and the capability to fight the war, we have a chance to save the country. You are right. The previous regime was able to basically to maintain the country clean from the drug. We have a zero rate of drug using and drug trafficking. In 2007, we have 14,000 drug users in Iraq. This is an official figure from the Iraqi government. So in 4 years, between 2003 and 2007, we have 14,000 people start to use drug. The government is certainly blamed here, but there is other factor actually. It's not, we cannot put the blame only on the government door. Other factor around because it's an occupied country, because a neighboring country getting benefit from that. So it is a very complicated picture, but the government, I think still we have hope if the government going to act soon with the determination and put the fighting drug as a priority. I believe we still have some chance to save the country from the drug problem.
Complicated indeed it is, and bleak it is as the way you portrayed it. And Iran somehow stands accused of facilitating, if not perhaps looking the other way, for drug traffickers and drug to come from Iran into Iraq. Dr. Sadiq, Ziba Kalam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I must disagree with you, both gentlemen, with you, Dr. Jassim, and also with Mr. Mustafa Alani in London. First of all, I don't think that the fact that there was no drug problem under Saddam regime is any credit to that regime.
Why is that?
As I am sure both you gentlemen, you gentlemen are aware, there is no such a problem. There is no drug problem in almost all the entire ruthless and police state and dictatorship countries. There is no drug problem in North Korea. There was no drug problem under old communist regime. And of course, there was no problem.
Well, this is an achievement.
When you have democracy, you are bound to have a drug problem, because it is one of the fundamental question posed by
that argument, Sadiq Ziba
Kalam,
Kalam, is absolutely flawed. You are not going to win any argument by stating that once you become democracy, then it's okay to have drug problems and it's okay to have abusers and it's okay to have traffickers. That's exactly what you just said.
I am not saying. No. I'm not saying that if you have a democracy, you must have drug problem. All I am saying that democracy begins with this fundamental principal question: is the individual free to do what he or she likes, or is the individual must do what the state tells him?
I cannot believe a professor of political science. A professor of political science is saying that. Basically, you are justifying a drug trafficking, a drug abuse, Sadiq Ziba Kalam.
No. I am neither justifying the drug traffic or the taking drugs.
But let me ask you the simple question. Is Iran responsible for the drug inundated Iraq or not?
You haven't let me to finish my my previous comment. You have the drug problem in Germany. You have the problem in drug problem in United States. Everywhere that you have democratic society, you have some kind of drug problem. Are you going to tell me that there is no drug problem in Western societies?
Indeed.
Are you going to tell me that no Western country is confronted with drug problems?
We started by saying that the strict application of the law by the previous regime prevented anybody from even thinking of using it, let alone trafficking it. But let us move on to Mustafa Al-Ani. Mustafa Al-Ani, if the Iraqi government is busy right now fighting terrorism and insurgency and militias and all that, and indeed it is, and perhaps, as you said, fighting drug abuse and trafficking is not at the top of its priority because simply those people are very difficult to catch. Explain to me in that case, how is it possible that fields are being cultivated with poppy seeds in Diwaniyah, in Kifl, and even in the orchid fame of Diyala? These are well known, as we say in the Arab world, so flagrantly available that any police officer will be able to identify it.
Actually, we have to understand the complication of the issue of fighting drug in Iraq. The political militia involved very heavily. Here, the warlord involved. Outside, and I can name the Iranian have a hand in this. The Iranians have a good reason why to encourage drug use in Iraq. They're fighting the drug in their country, no doubt about it. They're losing every year 100, 200 of their soldiers in fighting the drug. But when they come to Iraq, it's a question of turning a blind eye for a number of reasons. First, they think that in the beginning, they thought that if you can allow the drug to go to Iraq, American forces going to use this drug. And at the end of the day, you can get benefit. Secondly, most of the people who are involved in smuggling drug, they are involved in smuggling explosive and arms to Iraq. And they have a link to the Iranian intelligence services.
Is this with the sanction and knowledge of the Revolutionary Guards?
Certainly, I think we have the policy of turning blind eye. here. Not necessarily they are involved directly, but if a same smuggler is successful to smuggle arms as explosive to Iraq, to be used against the American, let him, I don't care whether he smuggle drug as well, because again, there's a general benefit from that. But certainly the Iranian government against drug use inside Iran,
let us listen from Sadiq Ziba Kalam.
Mr. Mustafa's comment and saying that Iran is responsible or a party to drug problem in Iraq and the Iranian official revolutionary guards, etc., they deliberately let drug to be taken into Iraq. Jassim actually reminds me exactly of what the many Iranian leaders say. Against the Americans, against the British, against the Western leaders for doing the same thing, to Iran. I mean, one after the other, Iranian leaders come on the television at the Friday prayer and blame the United States actually for propagating and spreading drug in Iraq. And now Jassim is doing the same thing. Only this time he is blaming Iranian for the drug problem. We must be realistic, and we must face the reality. Iran is suffering because of the drug problem. In that case,
Sadiq Ziba Kalam, explain to me
Iraq is suffering.
This drugs in the hundreds, if not thousands of tons coming into Iraq. Where is it coming from? Because Iraq's neighboring countries are very well known. You have Turkey, you have Syria, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Kuwait. Are you telling me it's coming from these countries, or as the reports indicate, and the confiscation by the Iraqi security officers occasionally shows that the drugs are coming from Iran?
You asked me the question and I answered you. Iran shares more than 1,000 kilometer border, which is mountain and desert, and it is not controllable neither by Iranian nor by the Americans nor by anyone else. And that 1,000 kilometer border is with Afghanistan, and we all know that Afghanistan is the motherland for producing narcotic and drug. Iranian, as Mustafa said, Iranian are losing many of their soldiers, revolutionary guard, etc., etc. But the point is that the amount of opium which is growing in Afghanistan is so huge that no matter how you hard try, at the end of the day, some smuggler can manage to bring the drug inside Iran. And from Iran,
that the problem is so overwhelming that is even the Iranian security borders are incapable of handling it. But Mustafa Al-Ani, the first shipment that was caught in Iraq was on the 25th of September 2003. Of all places, it was in Bab al-Sharji in downtown Baghdad, after traffickers managed to bribe custom officers on both sides of the border and bring it into Iraq. Will we see an increase in the drug trafficking in the next phase?
I believe so, for a very simple reason. I mean, if you monitor the way, the roots of this is coming from Pakistan, Afghanistan to Iran. Iran is basically the major part of the drug coming to Iraq, if not 99%, is coming from Iran, from the southern border of Iran. And the two provinces in Iraq, Basra and Amara, then going to Simawa. From Simawa, going to, first part of it going to be used in Iraq. Then you have the north route going to Turkey and to European market, and you have the south route going to the Gulf state. So we're going to witness increase if the government is not going to act really
especially if those traffickers, they find local sponsors like militia leaders and perhaps even custom officers, and let alone politicians and security officers in Iraq.
This is the problem. The problem is not only organized crime. It is not in organized crime only. It is a political groups behind it, and armed groups which have very strong influence inside Iran and inside Iraq. And many of these groups have linked to the Revolutionary Guard intelligence. So it is not a simple question of organized crime. There is a political groups behind it, and these groups have an armed militia, and it's very hard to tackle. This is the reason why I'm expecting we're going to witness even more and more of drugs coming through Iraq to the international market.
Mr. Mustafa Al-Ani, I heard the explanation and the denial by Sadiq Ziba Kalam. If you want to take a crack at it one more time before I move to another issue, Sadiq Ziba Kalam, regarding that the Revolutionary Guard is implicated in this.
I am merely saying, Jassim, that you say that Revolutionary Guard has enough power, has great maneuverability militarily, that it can prevent, if it wants, all the drug. Well, answer me this, Mr. Jassim. Hundreds kilos of drug goes from South America and from Mexico to United States. Are you going to tell me that it is with the collusion of the U.S. Drug Agency? The very fact that the might of the U.S. security guard cannot control oncoming of the drug from Mexico and other South American countries, does that mean that the
comparison
FBI
is flawed again, Sadiq Ziba Kalam, because according at minimum to Mustafa Al-Ani, hold on, according to Mustafa Al-Ani, it is in the interest of the Revolutionary Guard at minimum, perhaps at even a larger state of Iran, to destabilize Iraq drug-wise as well as violence-wise. But Mustafa Al-Ani,
as far as Mr. Jassim, as far as because I know Mustafa Al-Ani and he knows me, we know both each other. Whatever that is going wrong in Iraq, as far as Mustafa Al-Ani is concerned, it is the fault of Iranian government, it is the fault of Revolutionary Guard, it is the fault of Shiite in Iran.
In that case, I have to move on.
This is the kind of perspective of Mr. Al-Ani.
Indeed, reality is based on perception, and sometimes
the arms struggle. If you talk about arms smuggling into Iraq, Mustafa Al-Ani would say it's the Iranian. Drug, it's the Iranian.
You made your point.
Anything that goes wrong is the Iranian.
Go ahead, Mustafa.
They have their hands, no doubt about it. They have their interest. I'm not saying that the Iranian Revolution directly involved. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard allowed this drug by turning blind eye to the smuggling, and they have interest in that, and I don't blame them because they're defending their national interest, and this is their job. So if their national interest to encourage a drug to go to Iraq, let it go. This is a national institution.
So, Mustafa Al-Ani, the elephant in the room that we did not talk about is the occupation, which caused all this drug to come into Iraq. The London Times published a report in which it accused 9 British soldiers directly responsible for smuggling not only drugs but also weapons into Iraq. To what extent the presence of foreign troops, especially Americans, although the American law prohibits soldiers on duty to use the drugs, that also with the mercenaries and Blackwater and all these forces are consuming part of this drugs coming from Iran?
Certainly, the occupation force have a major responsibility. And security-wise and in terms of preventing the drug to be used by their own people. The border is supposed to be controlled by the American and the British, especially in Basra and Amara. And they didn't done their job here. But what they're saying that this is an organized political operation. This is their argument, which I don't agree to. So they have major responsibility. And if anybody saying that, you know, democracy come with the drug, great. We don't want democracy then. And if this is considering that this is why we have a drug problem in Iran, because we have democracy. So the question here, the occupation is responsible as well. It's not only Iran, it's not only the Iraqi government, the occupation forces is responsible, and they are not doing their job. And again, the question of priority. It is not a priority for the Iranian to fight to prevent the drug coming to Iraq. It's not the priority to Iraqi government. It's not a priority to the occupation forces.
Let me get a comment about occupation and foreign troops in Iraq and their responsibility from Sadiq Ziba Kalam. Go ahead, please.
Jassim, Jassim, because I have been accused by you and by Mustafa that I'm saying that whenever you have democracy, you must have drug. I must say that the drug problem is inherently associated with all the democratic societies. I'm not saying that if you have democracy, you must have drug. I'm saying that this problem is associated with all the democratic state. And that includes Iraq, because in my opinion, today Iraq is a democratic society, reasonably, of course, and in comparison to many other societies.
I have to point out, Sadiq Ziba Kalam, that prior to this, Iran, as well as in Pakistan and even part of Afghanistan, drug abuse was endemic, whether before the revolution or after the revolution. So what's the point?
No, the point that I'm raising is that you can ruthlessly deal with drug addiction, execute them, etc., etc. But in a democratic society, when there are rules and regulations, when there are checks and balances on government, you cannot treat people like that.
Mustafa Al-Ani, there are houses in Baghdad, Iraqis, they start calling it makhmakha. Basically, this is a joint for people to go and do all kind of pills and drugs. And on top of that, there is a prostitution for $500. You can have a wonderful day. Those houses have become so well known in Iraq that even security officers, they go to them.
Yes, we're talking again about political protection. We're talking about the government is not strong enough. We're talking about that the militia groups behind all this, because it's very, very profitable, whether drugs or prostitution or other immoral activities. So the question here, the government is too weak. I have no doubt that Mr. al-Maliki intention is very good, and Mr. al-Maliki wished to deal with the drug problem, whether inside of Baghdad or on the border. But he have no capability, and it is not a priority. And basically, it's need a lot of institution to fight this sort of a problem. But if we're going to leave this, and if we're going to leave the militia benefiting from this, I think that it's become the problem going to be very hard to fight. It's the question of militia. Those militia protecting the drug from the border to Baghdad, protecting all these houses, all the center of which consuming, even the production. It is the question of the government is not strong enough to fight. But we assume the government is strong in Iran. Why they are not able to help the Iraqi government to control their border and prevent those people from bringing drug to Iraq?
Jassim, please let me ask exactly the same question from Mustafa. The government in the United States is too powerful. Why there are drugs being smuggled from South American country to United States? Do you mean to tell me that the U.S. government is actually colluding with the smugglers?
A brilliant
is that
question.
Your answer?
Because, a brilliant question.
Because you are saying this about Iranian government.
No, the question of United States, you talk about country in Iraq. Until 2003, we don't have possibly even one single smuggler or one single user in Iraq. We're talking about a country which declared by international community as zero use of drugs. We are not talking about United States and Mexico when you have 100 years of drug smuggling. We are talking about a country which the problem of drugs emerged with the occupation and with the outside intervention.
Mustafa Al-Ani, Sadiq Ziba Kalam, gentlemen, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq. To watch the show online, please go to our website, aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, have a great week.